For a billionaire, money is a solved equation. At this level of wealth, the focus moves past the paycheck and towards securing total structural control over the economy. While everyday investors compare index funds, the top fractional percent meet in private. They coordinate on macro policy and consolidate global assets to ensure they do not just play inside the economy, they own the board. We are going to examine the 5 fortified enclaves where this coordination happens, and the financial mechanisms, from borrowing against portfolios to offshore trusts, used to lock in this dominance. Most people are taught to trade their time for a currency that loses value. This path leads to slow, linear growth, but leaves savings vulnerable to inflation and sudden regulatory changes. The wealthy use a different framework. By using assets as collateral, they maintain ready capital to buy distressed assets at a 40% discount. If you do not understand how this sovereign wealth is coordinated, you will likely remain on the losing side of these liquidity cycles. Every year, roughly 120 world leaders and billionaires gather in complete isolation at the Birkenstock resort in Switzerland. They meet under Chatham House rules, which means no press, no transcripts, and no public record of their discussions. When the leaders of central banks sit down with CEOs representing $3 trillion in market cap, they are deciding how the flow of money will shift globally. They coordinate on debt reorganizations and energy pivots long before these changes reach the public market. During a crisis, retail investors often sell out of fear, but these institutional leaders use that same volatility as a tool to absorb real assets, like land and infrastructure, at depressed prices they helped project months earlier. Having ready cash during a crunch allows you to set the price. If your debt isn't protected, you simply lose the asset to those who do. Oracle co-founder Larry Ellison owns 98% of the Hawaiian island of Lanai. Because he owns the land, the utilities, and even the local airline, the island serves as a laboratory where technology moves faster than law. In August 2024, federal courts ruled that Google held an illegal search monopoly. Within days, the top leaders in tech and venture capital flew to Lanai for private summits to discuss the future of the industry. Because the island runs on private solar grids and off-grid water, it is free from external technical surveillance. In this privacy, executives divide up energy resources for data centers and agree on how AI will be governed. By the time a government drafts a bill to regulate new technology, these cartels have already established the industry standards. This means the infrastructure is already built and integrated into the economy. Wealthy operators don't wait for laws. They build the systems that make future regulations reactive and ineffective. At Tetiaroa Atoll, the former sanctuary of Marlon Brando, media executives negotiated mergers that would eventually put 80% of entertainment under the control of just 4 companies. Far from the courtrooms where deals are officially filed, these leaders mapped out the price tags and strategies for these massive acquisitions. They used corporate debt, backed by their libraries of movies and music, to swallow up independent distribution channels. This shifted the industry from one-off sales to monthly subscription models. When you own the streaming apps and digital stores, you control the gate. Every creator must pay a tax to reach the audience, and every subscription creates a perpetual, predictable cash flow that the owners use to fund even more acquisitions. In November 1910, a secret train carrying the representatives of 1/4 of the world's wealth left New Jersey. These men, representing the Rockefellers and the J.P. Morgan Syndicate, were headed to Jekyll Island, Georgia. Their goal was to end banking competition by creating a central reserve system. This resulted in the Federal Reserve Act of 1913, which established a lender of last resort. This system allowed banks to lend more money than they actually held. If those loans failed, the central bank would absorb the losses. This effectively decoupled our currency from hard assets like gold. When new money is printed, the institutions closest to the source spend it while it still has full value. By the time that money reaches your paycheck, its purchasing power has already been reduced by inflation. Because of this, holding pure cash is a guaranteed way to lose wealth over time. To stay ahead, you must own scarce, income-generating assets that absorb that expanding money supply. Every July, 2,000 of the most powerful men in the world, from presidents to defense contractors, meet at Bohemian Grove in California. While the public focuses on their strange theatrical rituals, These events serve to build deep psychological trust. Shared experiences outside of the public eye allow these leaders to lower their professional guards. This is where the Manhattan Project was first organized, and where multi-billion-dollar government contracts are still settled today without public bidding. Institutional operators rely on these private, long-term networks for information, while the average investor is left relying on public news feeds that report on events after they've already happened. While you may not own an island, you can use the same structural rules the elite use to protect your own capital. First, avoid selling your assets. If you sell a stock to get cash, you trigger a tax bill. Instead, the wealthy keep the asset and get a low-interest loan by borrowing against its value. This provides tax-free cash while the original asset continues to grow. Second, separate who owns an asset from who controls it. By holding your real estate or business equity in irrevocable trusts, those assets are shielded from lawsuits and heavy estate taxes. Third, stop putting capital into speculative consumer goods. Shift it into critical infrastructure, like energy or essential housing, that generates cash flow regardless of what the broader economy is doing. If you follow standard retail advice, your purchasing power will drop by 5 to 8% every year through hidden inflation and taxes. These private enclaves exist because the elite know these rules, and they use them to stay on the winning side of the system. Subscribe to the Money Formula to start building wealth the same way.